This is the Plan C podcast, a sort of chiller podcast coming at you today. As you can tell by our title, we're talking about why we lie to ourselves. Not necessarily us specifically. Well, we do lie to ourselves. We specifically lie to ourselves for sure, but we just mean people in general. I am joined as usual by my lovely co-host Cameron. Cameron, how you doing?
What's up, guys? Chilling, vibing.
Yeah, just recorded a great episode. Looking forward to y'all enjoying it. While you're here, make sure you follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter at plan_C_podcast. We have lots of stuff there. Make sure you check us out on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, so many others. Check us out on Anchor. That's where you can get links to all platforms. We're there. Check us out on Friday nights. We stream. We stream for about 2 to 3 hours, whether it's Smash Bros, Among Us, League of Legends, literally whatever it is. It's good stuff either way. Make sure, make sure you're commenting. Make sure you're liking our stuff. Why not? And if you have any ideas for podcasts or you want to come on a podcast, come check us out. Hit us up. We would love to have you on. We love having people on that just talk. Yeah, that's all I got. Make sure you check out previous podcasts. I hope you enjoy this episode whenever, wherever you're listening. And enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of this recording. And we are back. As you can tell by our title and our lovely intro, we're talking about why we lie to ourselves today. So interesting topic. In full transparency, I got this idea by listening to the Ryan Russillo podcast, and he sort of did it as it relates to sports, but I was like, oh, that could be a really good idea, so let's just personalize the shit out of it. So, what's up, Cameron? How are you today?
I'm good. I'm chilling. Yeah, this is definitely a really interesting topic, and also full disclosure, this is something that we all do in terms of because I feel like sometimes when you talk about these types of situations, it's like as if we're kind of like talking about like these other theoretical people, but it's definitely something like everybody does it.
No, this is not us, commanding from upon high to people. Like, we 1,000,000,000% lie to ourselves. Like, that is a fact.
Every day.
Every day.
Probably more times than we tell ourselves the truth, honestly.
Oh, without a doubt. Because it's hard to tell yourself the truth. And I think that's sort of where lying to ourselves begins, right? Where
ain't nobody want to do that shit.
No, because sometimes reality fucking sucks. Reality sucks. And it's so much easier to not necessarily have delusions, but to sort of have an idea about, well, not an idea, but have misconceptions about what things are. And
delusions
and again,
pretty accurate too.
Yeah, I guess delusions. Yeah, you're right. And it sort of ties into our perception thing because, it's so easy to like get your hopes up and to within your own head be like, oh yeah, this is gonna happen. I'm gonna do this. Blah 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 blah. So for instance, I personally lie to myself all the time because I'll write something down in my planner and I'll be like, yes, I'm gonna wake up early, lie to myself, and do this before I go to work, lie to myself. Oh,
no, for sure.
And I think, sort of starting, I think procrastination is one of the most common forms of lying to ourselves, where it's like, again, you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and then that this time. Yeah, I got it. And then you end up watching YouTube videos for 3 hours.
Oh, no, like that I do that all the time. I think I'm a habitual procrastinator. in most things. And I think one of the ways, like, there are a lot of things that are built that allow us to lie to ourselves, like, very efficiently. Like, things like technology, substances, work, and like all these things can be like distractions that make it really easy for us to just be like, yeah, I'll do that in 20 minutes. Okay.
No.
Like, okay. like I think, like, I write things down in my planner. I might write like 5 things down. On a good day, I'll get like 3 of those things done. Like, and the thing is, you write something in your planner because you honestly think that you're gonna do it. Like, you think you're gonna do it, but in the back of your head, you're like, I'm not gonna do all that shit. I'm not gonna do all that.
No, it's true.
Yeah. And I think if I was to say on kind of like almost a smaller scale, because I do feel like there are like a lot of like small lies that we don't necessarily notice that we're doing. And I think it's like most of the time to like avoid immediate pain or hardship. Like if there's like a problem, but it would take a lot of time and effort, we might just like lie to ourselves that it's not that important, or we'll do it later, or it's not our responsibility. And I think the problem with that is that we're like really like almost hardwired to do that a lot of the time, but it doesn't really solve like long or reoccurring problems. And like it actually ends up being like definitely like more painful in the long run the majority of the time. But it's like just for those like small moments of comfort that we're like,
yeah, I think that's a really great point. And the small moments of comfort are definitely that's such a truth, because whether it's going through a breakup or procrastinating work or dealing with loss or whatever it is, it's so much easier in that singular moment to sort of pull attention away from that, because it's like I don't want to think about this. It's too painful, as you said. It's too painful, and the reality is X, Y, and Z, and the reality hurts.
Yeah, or maybe it'll just be too much effort.
Yeah, that too. And people, it's tough to put in effort, and it's tough to feel pain. These are things that everyday people go through, but we're sort of coached to avoid those things. And yes, hard work is going to get you everywhere in my life. Well, that's just not true. And I think that when we are avoiding those problems and lying to ourselves that we are in a place where we're like, no, I don't need to deal with that, or I don't have to think about that now. It's detrimental in the future, because when those problems become worse and sort of metastasize into other things, it gets to a point where it's unavoidable.
Yeah, and like usually at that point it's fucked.
Yeah, and at that point it is fucked, as you said.
Yeah, like, and I do think like another kind of reason that we lie to ourselves is because we have to be like okay with our situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because if we're not okay, like we have to believe that we're good people. Like almost like everyone believes that they're a good person. And like, and if you don't, you're probably suffering. Like, and you probably should get therapy. And we advocate for therapy. But most people just have to believe they're a good person. And so we have a version of ourselves that we believe we are, mm-hmm. and it's important to our mental health that we like match up to that image. And because of that, we lie to ourselves and we do things that don't match that standard, like almost as a defense mechanism. And you'll see people get upset when someone says something that kind of diverges from how they see themselves, if it's a criticism or maybe like even some small jokes. When you see people have that defensive reaction, it's like it's someone trying to like almost self-correct to be like, no, that's not me, this is me. And it's like it's never, we never actually match up to what we believe we are, because that's who we want to be. it's never exactly who we are.
Yeah, I agree, because we all, in our heads, we all have this idealized version of ourselves. And I think that you know, throwing that into the why do we lie to ourselves, that's perfect, because again, we all want to be this perfect version of ourselves, but at the end of the day, nobody can really be that perfect version of themselves. You can be very happy with where you are in your life and who you are, but I think that, you know, and it's very important to strive for these things, because, you know, you should be the truest person that you are. But I think that when people start believing that they can't improve anymore, or they can't grow anymore, that's a lie we tell ourselves because we're comfortable. And I think that's also, you know, along with avoiding pain, keeping comfort is such a big reason as to why we also lie to ourselves. Because when you're put in a situation where you're not comfortable, and, you know, maybe you've been going through motions that things have been easy and you get comfortable, when you're put outside of that zone, things are scary and things get hard. And it's so much easier to just stay in your box and be like, nope, nope, that's it. I'm not doing anything. And then you start coming up with reasons as to why, you know, you're staying in your box, whether it's a moral reason or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're like almost not almost. I think everyone are amazing at rationalizing things, and rationalizing things is one of the easiest ways in which we lie to ourselves, because you can make a reason for anything. I mean, you've seen people with crazy conspiracies, but it makes sense to them because they're able to like connect. Where that's what humans do. We make connections, and sometimes those connections lead us down ridiculous paths. And a lot of the time, though, it's actually just some small things that add up to lie to ourselves to make ourselves comfortable. And I also think that although probably if you're our age and you've heard of it, you've probably heard this before, but we're definitely, I think, the most fragile generation that I can think of. And I think that's because of all the things that we can do to avoid all of these problems. Like we're like genuinely constantly being protected, and we organize ourselves, whether it be online or in person, just amongst people that agree with us already. And I think that kind of fuels a lot of the conflict that we see, because when people get into an arena in which they're not comfortable or they're not around people that agree with them, you'll see a very different and almost I would say uglier reaction to things. That is just people that are not used to being in uncomfortable situations. And when you're not used to being in a position that makes you not feel great, you crumble and you kind of self-destruct, or you kind of just react with emotions rather than really calming down and thinking about it, and not always just taking things to heart per se.
Yeah, and I think that sort of comfort so much, especially with our generation, comes from the fact that we are so used to instant gratification. Whether, you know, it's like, I want a pizza. All right, cool. It'll be here in 30 minutes. Or I feel bad about myself. Post a picture on Instagram, get likes type shit. And I think that when, you know, you're put outside of that and there's maybe not that instant gratification, and you have to work for it, or, you know, you have to do X, Y, and Z for it. I think it's so much tougher, because it's harder to lie to yourself then, because the reality is staring you right in the face.
Yeah, for sure. And I also do want to say that sometimes like lying to ourselves can be beneficial in some ways.
Oh,
like
yeah,
although most of the things we're going to talk about are probably going to be negative, because lying is just generally not a great thing.
Yeah, but, not accepting reality is you know.
Yeah, it's bad. But like, you know, like there are times people say like fake it till you make it. And although that's kind of a cliche, a lot of the times it's like it's really true. Like if you had like in your heart, if you really don't believe that you can do something, then you're not gonna do it, because you just you're gonna fail. So then why try? Like you'll naturally just feel less motivated to do it. So in some sentiments, it's good to feel like, oh, I'm the best, or like, oh, I can do this, even if you don't necessarily know that you can. In those moments, those lies can be kind of empowering, so that you can actually just they can get you to act.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a great point, because again, with sort of our generation, specifically in the instant gratification, it just like, I don't know. It's harder. And I actually, I don't disagree with your statement that we are the sort of most vulnerable. But I think that there's a certain amount of sensitivity and self-awareness with our generation where, yes, we're being so overstimulated, but those thoughts are still in the back of your mind. Reality. You know it, but you just deny it.
Yeah.
And I think because of the instant gratification of Instagram and stuff, it's such an easy distraction from those scary realities. And when we do that, it's like, well, I'm just going to waste 3 hours doing this and not focusing on this.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're also like the generation that has the most to deal with in terms of like the amount of information, the amount of input that we have into everything that's going on. There's like a lot of negativity and a lot of things that were kind of that are thrown at us during like the course of even a day, that we have to kind of rationalize and organize and put away. Like just the fact that we have this social media where we learn about atrocities that are happening in halfway across the world. Not that and people actually look at that shit, but you do have the possibility of intaking all of this negativity, and it has to go somewhere. So a lot of the time, instead of having that kind of crash your mood, we distract ourselves with other things, and we kind of numb ourselves using smoke weed, do whatever, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's not like it's not reasonable. So it's like we're very sensitive, and we are kind of fragile, but it's not like it's necessarily like because of like, oh, we're like bad. It's not like it's like like it happened out of nowhere. It's like, it's just kind of the reality of like, even if like, how our parents sometimes say, oh, like, you're so fragile, blah, 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 blah. If your parents were born in our time, then they would definitely be just as sensitive and just as like vulnerable. It's just the way things are. But I think acknowledging it is very important, so we can kind of deal with it on certain levels. Like, like when you see something negative, when you're scrolling through your feed, it's like, okay, like, sure, you could feel shitty about it and, just distract yourself doing something else. Or maybe you could do something productive after that. Or maybe that feed that you're looking at probably isn't great for your mental health, and you might want to cut down on those hours so you don't always have this negativity shooting at your face. Or maybe you should look at different things to change your algorithm so it's not feeding you all these atrocities. That maybe another way we lie to ourselves is that a lot of people actually thrive off of these kind of this drama and negativity that's everywhere. It's like sometimes we need to admit that that's happening, because we all know that some people see more of this stuff than others. And it's not random, it's because that's what the system or the algorithm that you're looking at is deciding that you would spend the most time looking at. So it does take a certain amount of self-awareness to know that like sometimes we are in a bed of our own making.
I think sort of on the opposite spectrum of what you were saying, I think a lot of us lie to ourselves and sort of have this feeling that we're not okay, when in reality, we're fine given the circumstances. Like I am personally, I do this a lot where, I feel shitty and I'm like, I have no future. I I don't know what I'm doing. I'm still living at home. I'm working a dead end retail job. And it's like, nah, dude, like, stop. Like, yes, you are feeling this, but that is you lying to yourself. Like, look at the body of work that you are putting in, and sort of, again, that's where the sort of perception versus reality comes in, where it's like, yes, you may feel incredibly shitty right now, but like, look at what you are doing. Look at the path you are on. And that's where, again, our results-based society kind of is shitty, because it's like, I'm not getting the results I want right now, but I'm still putting the work in, but I still feel shitty, like,
No, I definitely feel you. Like one of the things that I struggle with the most is like feeling like I've worked hard enough. It's like a personal struggle that I constantly battle with. And like honestly, like a lot of the time I don't feel like I've like really put in the amount of effort that I necessarily could, and that's probably true. But like the problem is that I feel that me, as well as I find a lot of people, are constantly comparing themselves to those around them, and so the standards are very skewed. It's like the people that you might necessarily be looking at are people that are like at the top of their game, and they're able to they've like they've done all the steps that you haven't done in order to be able to exert that amount of energy. And so when we immediately kind of compare ourselves to these people that we might idolize, or that now that we see them all the time, they're like constantly people that are very impressive, that are shoved in our faces, that we think, oh, we should be there already. And that's kind of the problem, because that stifles it. Like it stifles your productivity, and it stifles your actual motivation. And so it's like sometimes it's kind of counterproductive, because like sometimes I'll like, all right, I'm not working hard enough, and I'm like, and that's true, but acknowledging that I'm not working hard enough, and then versus like I'm not working as hard as so and so, are two very different feelings. And one of them could be used as motivation. The other one is generally just like how we kind of shit on ourselves.
Yeah. No, it's so true, and it's so easy to get into the mindset of like, oh my God, look at all these people around me doing all this hard work, and they're getting so many clicks and so many views and so many likes, and the stuff that I'm doing, it's not good enough because it's not getting that attention. And it's so easy to fall into that.
Yeah, I think that the only people that we should probably be comparing ourselves to is ourselves from like yesterday,
Yeah.
Like, and I truly believe that, because there are a lot of people that compare, even if you compare yourself to yourself from a year ago, that's generally not necessarily that, like, unless you're looking how far you've come. If you get hung up on things that are too far in the past, it'll definitely negatively affect you. And if you get hung up on things that are too far in the future, it will also negatively affect you. But if you compare yourself to other people, then that always negatively affects you. It's like sometimes the other like in the past or the future, those things are sometimes they can be healthy depending on how you do it. But if you're comparing yourself to someone else, it's generally always going to be negative. And it's because you can never you like everyone has their own concoction of experiences that led them to that point. So there's really no point in comparing yourself to other people, because in order to have what they have, you'd have to live their life and have all their experiences. So it's like
exactly,
it's like a moot point. So I do think that just like saying like, oh, I did this yesterday, and now today I did this and it made me feel better. That's, I feel like, more healthy, just comparing ourselves to ourselves from the previous day. And I think that comes into play when you're using things like planners. I think planners are really good. Journaling is also very healthy.
Ooh, planners are great because you look back and you're like, look at all this stuff I did.
Yeah, because I think we need to find ways to like to reward ourselves for our work, and using likes and social media and all that stuff isn't necessarily a healthy way of doing so, because it's erratic, and it's like it's just not consistent. But if you compare yourself to how you did the previous day, it's always going to be consistent, because
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
if you're paying attention, you'll figure it out.
So, just talking about lying to ourselves, what's something that you find you lie to yourself about? It could be something frivolous, it could be something deeply personal.
Um, I'll have to think about that because the one I would use would be working hard.
Mm.
So, do you mind answering that, and I'll swing back.
Yeah, no problem. Something personally I certainly lie to myself about is, and I don't know if this is subconscious or it's, it's me actually intentionally doing it, but I certainly lie about traumas that have affected me. And it's on both spectrums where in my head I'm like, oh, this doesn't affect you as much as it does. And then on the other side of it's like, oh my God, like this is so terrible. I feel so terrible about this. I'm affected by this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, if I sit and I think about it, is it actually as bad as I think? You know, and thinking about like people close to me who have died or thinking about a bad breakup and really thinking about, okay, how much is this affecting me? And, you know, understanding that it's like, hey, maybe this wasn't as bad as you think it was, because since that has happened, you're doing stuff that you weren't doing before. You're growing as a person when you weren't before. So maybe this lens of, hey, this is all bad, and you feel so shitty about it, and you're still thinking about it day to day. Like, yeah, that might be true, but you have taken that and turned it into something and things that you weren't doing before. And I personally struggle with that specifically because I'll wake up and I'll have dreamt about somebody in my past, and it's like, great, now I feel shitty. And then when I feel shitty, it's like I'm just shitting all over myself. I can't do anything right. Again, like I'm living in my mother's home. It's stuff that is so easy to pile on. But again, when you take a second and you're like, wait, hold on. Not all of these results that have come from this are bad things. It's so easy to just deny that and to be like, no, it's so bad, because it's like picking at a scab, you know? It's like picking at a scab because, yeah, in the time it may be what you're feeling, but is that really true? Like, is it all bad? Is it all doom and gloom? Like, you may feel it is, but the things that you have done since that incident, maybe you need to cut yourself some more slack. And I definitely struggle with this because I at times have such a hard time of shifting my perception because I'm so much in my own head, and I'm like, oh, I'm just in the doldrums, and I'm feeling shitty, and I hate everything, and I hate this person for doing what they did. But then, when you're not feeling that same way, whether it's 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, an hour later, the next day, you can see, like, hey, that that might have been incredibly shitty, but you're on a path now. You're on a different path now. And the reality is you wouldn't be on that path if that didn't happen. I know I'm being incredibly vague and not being specific, but it's because I don't want to be specific. I don't have to be specific. It's my podcast. Yeah, I would say I would say that is my answer. I hope you enjoyed my monologue.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I do agree though that like traumatic situations and things that have happened in our past, like usually we get kind of like down in the dumps about them a lot of the time, but it's like a lot of the time when I think about the things that necessarily have negatively impacted me, it's like, okay, if you could, would you go back and change that, knowing that you wouldn't be who you are today? I would definitely not take that trade. Like a lot of the times, there are some traumatic events that definitely some people would like to replace, but at the end of the day, like, a lot of everything that happens to us is what kind of makes us who we are. And some people have gone through some really, really awful things that have had really terrible impacts on their lives and probably will continue to, but you can't change them. It's like there's nothing there that you can have an impact on besides learn from it, and
literally
those experiences are like sometimes something terrible that happened to you might have that information and you can help someone else so they don't go through the same thing, or you can stop yourself from going through a similar situation, and like there are a lot of scenarios in which those can be used to kind of like benefit you, even if they really, really fucked you up at some time. But for me it's definitely, like I already explained it, but definitely hard work is going to be the definition of working hard is definitely the way I lie to myself the most. I would say another one kind of off the dome is sometimes I will kind of like rationalize myself out of feeling things. And it's probably something I've been doing most of my life, but like a lot of the time it's like there are certain things that maybe probably like, like just based on the values that have been placed upon me in terms of like what I should be trying to achieve. It's like these things are what's important. And because everything should be focused on, whether it be advancing your career or getting good at this or doing well in school and sports, it's like everything else is kind of like kind of irrelevant, and sometimes I'll have like an emotional reaction to something and I'll just rationalize it out of existence. I'll just be like, well, it doesn't really have anything to do with X, Y, and Z, so why am I thinking about it? But it's like I'm like, the fuck am I doing? But a lot of the time I would say it's important to sometimes to acknowledge those emotions, and so you can reflect on them properly rather than just kind of like eradicating them in the moment. And that's definitely something that I struggle with, and something that has definitely kind of like affected my personality for better or worse, because like a lot of the times when I hear things like something terrible's happened, or everyone's complaining about whatever situation, I have like almost no like emotional connection to a lot of these issues. It's instinctively, because it's like I can't do anything about it, blah 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 blah. But I think sometimes having that kind of emotional connection is important when talking to people about issues, whether they be like political or anything, just because you need to tailor your rhetoric in a way that makes people feel like they're heard and that their emotions are meaningful, for sure.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Before we get out of here, you got anything else?
I would say one of the ways I feel like we lie to ourselves a lot these days is with our outrage on kind of a similar topic. I think we use outrage to like validate feelings that we don't really have evidence for, because people need to have their feelings be justified. And when we feel emotions, we instinctively want them to be correct, and we believe things we don't know to be true, or even sometimes subconsciously know to be false. I think we've all known someone that's in the context of an argument contradicted themselves to something they've said in a different argument, and it's in order to fit the current narrative of our feelings. And I feel like this is the same way we get offended as a defense mechanism, because like most of the time we get offended by something when someone says something about us personally, there is usually some truth to it, or there be no reason to get offended, or generally when someone gets offended based off of some whatever issue, at that moment they've essentially disregarded any reflection that they're going to have on the conversation, because they're saying, now I'm offended, therefore you've done something wrong and I can say whatever I want. And that's a way that we lie to ourselves. And, you know, sometimes we get offended or outraged in order to agree with our peers, even if we don't have the facts behind the subject matter or truly care personally. We do it just because maybe it's someone we trust and we think, oh, you know, they'll know, and therefore we adopt their beliefs, but you don't really know, you know.
Well, I also think it's so much easier to do that.
Yeah, it's an effort thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say I think the most pervasive way we lie to ourselves is definitely because of our belief systems. And I think we all build these like very complex belief systems that are like comprised of all these other smaller beliefs, and everything needs to be correct in order for the belief system to function. And these systems are usually very tied to our identity these days, which is a terrible idea. If you feel that your beliefs are really tied to your identity, I would recommend that there should be some separation there. But yeah, I think we believe or not believe things regardless of the truth behind some of the facts, just in order to keep the system afloat. And this is super common in politics where, you know, there's only two sides to choose, but facts don't necessarily align themselves in those facts. And therefore that's where you get all this polarization, because people can't believe this, and that's like a conservative idea, and then you can't believe that. And liberal, you can't believe both of them because you have to be on one side or the other, and you have to vote on one side or the other. So we kind of separate ourselves based on these false notions that is us lying to ourselves that you know that this has to be wrong because my entire portfolio of beliefs says that this is an absolute truth, or this is an absolute like falsehood. You know, like I guess to kind of I guess I have a lot to say on this topic, I guess, because
definitely do. Yeah,
it's something that I definitely you know, like I generally try to separate my beliefs and identity from each other. And like after I think I did that, I started realizing, you know, I was able to kind of see how people do that a lot of the time when it comes to internet politics and, you know, social media. You know, like the way like people generalize things is a way that we lie. You know, we generalize specific experiences to larger issues and come to conclusions about groups of people or things without any real evidence. You know what I mean? Like you might have an experience of, you know, like, oh, well, I was on Twitter and some conservative said something that pissed me off, and now I hate all conservatives, you know, despite the fact that you live in like the Northeast and you've never actually like met one outside of like seeing a all lives matter flag on somebody's house, you know. But you know, there's like, you know, there are so many ways that we reach these like conclusions about large groups of people. You know, there are all these lies of omission that we have, you know, that to avoid confronting things. You know, we focus on certain things and forgo other information in order to keep, you know, a stable system and not have to change. You know, we see that with friends. You know, we all have that friend that does that thing that we all know we hate. You know, we all know that we fucking hate that shit. And they do it, and we kind of like because we don't want to deal with the aftermath of the fallout, no one brings it up. And so we constantly lie to you know, there must be a reason behind why they do this, or they've gone through this, that, and the third, and that's why we put up with this really annoying behavior. And you know, but when it's really like if someone actually just stood up and like talked to the person and kind of had that issue come to a head, you wouldn't have to deal with years of resentment towards certain people or just this gradual anger, you know. But I think it really comes to like a lack of psychological strength to deal with like the fallout of admitting things, you know. It's like keeping our identity secure, you know, protecting our ego, you know, avoiding trauma, rationalizing things. It's really all just because at that moment we don't really have the psychological strength to deal with an issue and
be uncomfortable
and
face the reality of like, oh, maybe I'm not the person I thought I was.
Yeah, you know, and like, you know, when you I guess we should I'll kind of end with things that definitely we can do, myself included. And like one of those things is definitely like self-reflection, taking some time out of the day to reflect, meditate, like when you see someone making an opinion, maybe instead of trying to judge someone on what that says about them, maybe ask what your opinion reflects about yourself, and not a lot of people necessarily do that throughout the day. Like when you do something, your actions, like what does that action necessarily say about your character? Like taking more time to responding or generating an opinion. When someone says something, instead of immediately retorting, maybe like just taking a second and like whatever that feeling that you felt when that person said that thing, take a second to ask yourself, well, why do I feel this, before like responding based on that feeling that you haven't necessarily reflected on yet. Not taking a stance until you do personal research rather than just hearing and believing what someone you trust says, I think is a good practice, so you don't end up lying to yourself when you're trying to rationalize someone else's belief into your system and it doesn't fit, and then all of a sudden you end up crashing. That's never great. And I guess my last thing would be not focusing on being right and trying to focus on trying to learn when in a combative situation or maybe even discussion. Because like a lot of the times I feel like when we talk about things like this, a lot of the reaction is like, or what I've seen from other people that talk about it is like, who are these people to be talking about these types of subjects? Like, and we do that because there's some truth to it, and there's some reflection that we need to do, and instead of dealing with it, we kind of like project, and we disregard the people that are giving the message because there's some truth to it, and so I think we don't always need to be right, and I think we need to stop trying to be right all the time. It's like it's not really that important. It's more important just to like learn and try to do the best that you can, instead of not only trying to be right but other people making other people wrong. It's just like it's really less helpful than we give it credit for.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to leave off on. I do apologize for my dog barking a lot.
I didn't even hear it.
Oh yeah, the doorbell went, and yeah, it wasn't. He was barking a lot. Anyway, hope everyone has enjoyed this episode so far today, or today, tomorrow, whenever you listen to it. This will probably come out like a week from Saturday. It's now Wednesday, so hope you enjoy it. Make sure you check us out on Instagram, check us out on Twitter. We are there. We run the accounts ourselves. Make sure you check out previous. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, definitely. Also, like if you have any opinions on these types of things, definitely
hit us up.
Hit us up if you have any ideas of things that you want to talk about. You want to hear us monologue a bit more. Let us know.
We've got a long list of things that we have topics and shit, but we're always open to talk about other things. That's what it's all about. We're about open communication here. Make sure you're checking out previous podcasts. We have lots of fun philosophical stuff, lots of fun sports stuff, some great interviews there, some great interviews coming up. Keep your eyes peeled. We're on YouTube. We stream every Friday, and that's pretty fun. It's usually both of us. Make sure you are checking out our Discord. We have some fun people there. You got anything else, Cameron, before we get out of here?
Not really. Just hope y'all enjoyed the episode.
Get your vaccinations. Keep wearing the masks. It's almost over. I promise. Meditate, y'all. And listen to our meditation podcast, because that could help you out too. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to follow Cameron on Instagram at @stow_low_. He posts some great art.
Thank you.
And he's got some stuff in the tubes that I think is pretty cool, but I'm not going to spoil anything. You're going to have to follow him and check it out for yourself. Anyway, have a great day, morning, night, dusk, dawn, whenever you're listening. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you. And stay safe.